I promised I would try to give you some overviews on the communication theory articles that you'll be reading, and this one is for definition of a man and a woman, a person, a human being. Okay, so you're trying to put together the puzzle of this class, and you have the big idea. The main idea of the whole course is that it's important for humankind to discover communication in a way that hasn't happened before, and to do it on a larger scale. I shouldn't say it hasn't happened before. There certainly are those who zeroed in on language and symbols and interaction and communication. George Herbert Mead did back 100 years ago, but there was still a lot of discovery to do that he didn't do, but he did start us, and others had started us much earlier than that, focusing on trying to understand what was unique about human beings and always coming to language and symbols and so on. So there are those off and on throughout history who came to those kinds of awarenesses. That's the big idea of the class, that we need to discover communication, which is the same thing as saying we need to discover language and symbols and their relationship to human beings. So, and the reason we need to do that, I have argued, is because in the discovery, new possibilities open up to harmony and peace among human beings. That harmony and peace is something we have sought. Groups of people have sought all throughout history, but never been able to make very much progress. Human history seems far more cyclical than it does progressive in regards to conflict and peace and living well with one another in our differences. So we started with symbolic interaction. And Mead, being the sociologist, he asked a different question than Burke did. He asked, what's the origin of society and all that makes up society? And in his search for origins, he ended up with language as the central thing, symbols, and using symbols to interact. And through that interaction, the creation of a human mind, of self, of society. Without the interaction, the loss of mind, self, and society. Unless you're a Taoist or a Buddhist, in which case you deliberately stop the interaction because the symbols were a distortion of reality. That discussion we were having at the very end of class. Distortion of reality or not, they do create a map. Well, they create a map of the territory being the physical and the social world. Without language in our minds, we have no way of experiencing the social or the physical world. Again, unless you take a different view of that, which says the Taoist, the Buddhist view, that map we've put in our mind is a distortion of the world, which most Western language, communication, and cultural theorists would acknowledge language as a distortion. The map, that is language, is not the actual territory it's trying to represent. Or a physical map is not the territory, and we would be foolish to take a physical map and presume it was the actual territory. That is the same with language and symbols. It too is a map, but it too is not the territory. And we would be foolish to mistake a map of language as the actual territory, that territory being the social and our understanding of the physical world. Well, there's much more to say about symbols and language and communication in relationship to these kinds of issues. We just don't have, we could devote a whole class, a whole 3 credits in a semester to just focusing in on this, but we don't have that kind of time, and it's an introductory class to communication theory. So we'll explore it somewhat as we go, and we'll finish the class incomplete. Now, in regards to Burke's article, what essentially Burke is going to do is say to us, the same thing that Mead said, but he comes at it from a different question. His question simply was, what's unique about human beings? Remember, Mead's question was, what's the origin of society? But they both come to the same space, and that is this business of symbols. And so what Burke does is he focuses in on symbols, man is symbol using, and then he develops that idea a little bit as his first idea, main idea. But then he goes on essentially to develop clauses that result in our ability to use symbols. And those clauses become the qualities or the unique characteristics of human being by virtue of the fact that they are symbol using. So he'll talk about the idea of the negative. If you just go back to Hegel, we did a little bit of Hegel talking our last class period. You'll see the idea of thesis and antithesis in the negative very similar. It's kind of a concept, and he'll develop it in a little bit of a unique way, a little different than Hegel, but it's still that core concept. So just explore the negative and his idea of the negative. He'll explore the idea of nature and how we are created, or how we create tools that separate us from nature, and how that again is a unique function of symbols. Animals don't do that. He'll talk a little bit about hierarchy and how hierarchy functions in a particular way in the human world. And even though hierarchy functions indeed in the animal world, you'll want to look and try to understand the differences. And then he has this idea about how we are rotten with our perfection, and that again, this is a unique feature of symbols. So that's all you have to do. That's kind of a map of the article. Is just drive into this business of human beings as symbol using, and then explore each of those clauses, bring it back to the symbols, see if you can see the relationship between each of the clauses to one another. And remember, I mean, a good way to do this is, in fact, you might notice he's using the negative himself and how he's writing the article. And you can look at that. Okay, well, that's good. Hope that helps, and we'll see you in class tomorrow.